couldn't have changed anyway. Guqqie wasn't dressed for the winter. According to their studies, this was the most normal and unassuming earthly attire: a bright floral button-up thrown over a white t-shirt, light green pants that cut off a bit before the knee, long black socks covered by flat and surprisingly comfortable shoes with no laces, sandals. This, Z had found, was the outfit of a tourist, someone who visited a place for the first time, usually for fun, but didn't raise much suspicion from the locals because that was something humans did sometimes, visiting places. It was the perfect disguise. The others had looked at Sam strangely before, when she walked outside in that outfit in the rain, but Guqqie had shut down any further protests or questioning as Moon simply tipped her head back in wonderment, letting the raindrops fall on her face, smile wide and bright. Everything on Earth was new. Everything. The people, the landscape, the wildlife, the technology, the gravity. Almost nothing was as it had been back home. It was all an adjustment. Guqqie thought she was handling it quite well, all things considered, for a tourist. But as the months dragged on, and what had been a vacation started to feel more and more like a marooning, it began to get cold. Guqqie knew, logically, that they should wear something warmer, but couldn't risk raising suspicion. Z didn't have any other clothes besides her spacesuit. The first time it snowed, Guqqie thought the world was ending. That morning, they studied the newly frosted ground with a curious sort of caution, wishing that someone had been around so she could ask about it. But the only person who remained in town was Bear, and no matter how many times Guqqie called out for him, his door remained firmly shut. So Z was left to make their own conclusions. If it had snowed only a few months prior, when the town was bustling with people who claimed to be her friends, Guqqie might have come to learn that snow was something humans enjoyed. Z might have gasped in surprise as a cold ball of snow hit their shoulder. They might have turned to see the culprit double over in laughter and smiled, hurling a snowball of her own back at the town's self-described knight. She might have joined in as the others made men out of snow, gave them sticks for arms and carrots for noses. Guqqie may have, as the night quieted down and most of the others returned to the warmth of their houses, laid down on their back to make a mold of themselves in the snow, smiling over at Amesy as she explained that they were meant to look like angels. But none of that ever happened. Instead, she was alone, and she was cold. And though the world hadn't ended yet, it would end for them soon enough. As Guqqie stood at the top of their tower and watched the sun make its slow descent below the horizon, suspending the world into a darkness Boone could no longer avoid, she suppressed a shiver. "You're cold," their echo said, and Guqqie only shrugged. "I was never prepared," Z replied ruefully. "I was dressed like a tourist. I wasn't prepared to stay." Silence fell for a moment, the wind howling in her ears. "You could, though," countered the stranger with their voice and body but without their face. "You still could stay." Guqqie laughed. It was rough and choked, and the cold suddenly had sharper teeth as it bit into her skin. "I can't, and you know that. I was always just passing through." The voided stranger said nothing. When Guqqie jumped from their tower, she thought of the sun, of warmth. Z thought of home, of two families had and lost, but mostly they thought of warmth. When she got home, to more familiar and hopefully more forgiving skies, Guqqie could shut off their tourist disguise and find a way to belong somewhere again. That was her first mistake, assuming they'd belonged anywhere to begin with. When Star woke to the blinding fluorescent lights of their spaceship, hallways endless and empty, all she could do was laugh. At least, Guqqie thought, as Moon rose to her feet and prepared to run, it isn't cold.
All of this turbulence wasn't forecasted. Apologies from the intercom, and I am relieved that I'd left my room tidy. blood-sniffing shark. And while my dreams made music in the night, carefully I was going to live.
Guccie's always been a creature of faith, driven by a higher something, a gossamer fine thread tying her to a force she couldn't name, but felt in the depths of her soul. What this ephemeral something was, Guccie could never explain. It extended beyond reason, beyond explanation, beyond any words Guccie knew. Back home, on her planet of cold truths, there was no room for belief. To honor the soft braying of your heart rather than beating it into submission was weakness, and Guccie was always weakest of them all. But following her heartstrings tug didn't feel like weakness to Guccie. Not when she boarded that ship all that time ago, the stars above the lone witness to her pilgrimage. Not when she'd crashed into this strange land, finding a sort of Eden in the arms of a wandering adventurer. Not even when her Eden left her for new adventures. The betrayal, poisonous and inevitable. A snake who can't deny its nature to strike. But now, the days and nights blend into one another, a spiral of misery forever collapsing in on itself. The scenery never changes, the stars forever stagnant, a picture-perfect snapshot of a never-ending nightmare. The hallways, barren and sterile, mock her plaintive cries with their echoes, her wails of someone, anyone, please let me out, let me out, let me out, ringing down the cavernous lengths. Somewhere deep inside of Guccie, she knows the truth. Even as she runs, even as she begs for escape or release, she knows this is it. The light at the end of the tunnel, the final stop on the line. This is it. She never acknowledges it, not even in the deepest recesses of her mind. To do so would be to admit that the same ember of hope, pushing her down one more hallway, was just as foolish and misguided as the one that kept her rooted in place, awaiting a homecoming that would never arrive. Guccie wouldn't allow that. She couldn't. So instead she runs. She cries. She believes. That's enough for Guccie. It has to be.
You wouldn't leave till we loved in the morning. You'd learn from movies how love ought to be. And you'd say you love me and look in my eyes. But I know through mine you were looking in yours. And did you know the Liberty Bell is a replica silently housed in its original walls? And while its dreams played music in the night quietly, it was told to believe. Wanted to die clean and pretty, but I'd be too busy on working days. So I am relieved that the turbulence wasn't forecasted. I couldn't have changed anyways. I always wanted to die clean and pretty, but I'd be too busy on working days. I always wanted to die clean and couldn't have changed anyways. So I am relieved that the turn